drunk drivers, tail-wagging turn signals, erratic employees, and the return of the tire demon. 20 clips sent in by the people who captured them are coming up, so hold on to your handlebars. Morgan was passing a Honda Civic when the driver suddenly turned into the side of his Honda Accord without warning, sending him out of control. After skidding down the road and jumping a curb, Morgan's car slammed into a tree, obliterating both it and his car before he finally came to rest in a motel parking lot. Morgan said the insurance company is taking their sweet time getting him a repair quote, so he's hired a lawyer to make sure everything goes smoothly. Morgan told us that drivers in a college town are expected to be bad, but San Marcos is on another level. I'm just wondering what these two were thinking as they witnessed this Honda-on-Honda violence. Todd was following a silver Land Rover that had been swerving around and drifting over lane lines. Fearing the driver was impaired, watch what happened while he was on the phone with the local emergency dispatch.
Okay, he just hit somebody right in the intersection of 6,000 West.
The Land Rover smashed into the back of another SUV that was stopped at a red light. Todd continued to give updates to the 911 operator and checked on the victim while waiting for the police to arrive. Todd told us he's already helped get 3 drunk drivers off the road prior to this, but thankfully, those cases didn't result in any collisions. Ben was headed toward Ann Arbor when he watched a pickup truck ahead of him lose its bed cover.
What the Wham, bam, Dashcam, here we go!
Ben kept going while the pickup driver stopped, presumably to pick up their bed cover. Santiago was on his way home when he watched a pickup truck hop a curb onto an island before mowing down a palm tree. Santiago called 911 and the police responded and cited the pickup driver for being reckless. He claimed he'd fallen asleep after working an 18-hour shift. Lee witnessed some instant justice while on his way to Colorado Springs after a ski trip. The express lane on the left is only open at certain times, and the rest of the time it's for emergency vehicles only. Another motorist decided the signs didn't apply to them and used the emergency lane to get around other traffic. But a cop wasn't thrilled with this and pulled them over, much to the delight of Lee and his wife Marisa. Lee told us they've been watching our videos since the first episodes of Takedown Stories and they appreciate the production quality and narration. Thanks, you two. We're glad you're satisfied. Jonah was headed to class in Las Vegas, New Mexico. Yes, there is a Las Vegas in New Mexico. Suddenly, a van came flying through a stop sign right toward a loaded dump truck.
What the What the
The van barely missed the dump truck before spinning out and stopping against the stop sign on the other side. When it hit the curb, the rear wheel ripped off the car, lodging under the brake rotor. The driver then peeled out, sending the wheel flying before speeding off and leaving Jonah in shock. He called 911 and followed the reckless van driver until it parked at a house. The cops told Jonah they'd make sure everything was okay. Jenna was driving her 4-year-old to school when a company pickup came across the double yellow lines into her lane. Jenna swerved, but the pickup still struck her Jeep Renegade before speeding off. The driver behind her was nearly hit as well, and they stopped and called 911 for Jenna while she called her husband. Jenna told us the pickup driver called the police an hour later and told them that she'd hit him before driving off. After Jenna provided her dashcam footage, the other driver lost his job and his driver's license. Jenna was pregnant when this collision occurred and has since given birth to a healthy baby boy. Even though the collision did $6,500 in damage to her Jeep, there were no injuries to her, her baby, or her 4-year-old. Frank spotted a driver using his dog as a turn signal to make a U-turn from the rightmost lane. Frank made room so the dog could make it safely across all the solid white lines, so I guess the other driver's plan worked. Marnie was driving home from work when it began to rain heavily, which then turned into freezing rain and then snow. Suddenly, a pickup driver lost control and went sliding off the highway. After sliding up the embankment, the pickup returned to the highway and the driver continued on like nothing had happened. Nice recovery. Sebastian was driving with his girlfriend and was keeping a close eye on the Nissan following them as it kept getting dangerously close. A few minutes later, they suddenly heard a loud crash behind them. The Nissan driver had drifted into the oncoming lane and clipped another car. Sebastian's girlfriend called the police and offered their dashcam footage. You asked for more clips from bicycles, but we rarely have any sent in. Thankfully, David sent us this one, which also happens to be this week's Tesla behaving badly. That Tesla man can't drive! On his way home from work, David was passed by a Tesla that came within inches of him and his e-bike as they both rounded a bend. David honked his horn, but the Tesla driver didn't seem to care. Marcus was headed to work with a coworker when they watched someone on a mobility scooter start crossing train tracks even though the railroad crossing gates had lowered and the signals were flashing.
Yeah.
Now we've got a problem.
A bystander ran to pull the woman's scooter back as the train operator hit the brakes and sounded the horn, but thankfully she'd already changed her mind about challenging the train to a race. Take a moment and consider how far the train traveled even after the operator activated the emergency brakes. If someone had continued to cross the tracks, they definitely would have been injured or worse. AJ was headed to work one morning after a snowstorm when he watched another driver try to turn right from the left lane. The driver of a pickup wasn't able to stop in time to avoid a collision. The driver of the car blamed the pickup driver for the collision. AJ gave the pickup driver his phone number so he could get a copy of his dashcam footage. Rhea was on her way home after an overnight work shift. As she approached a main road where traffic from the right is not allowed to turn left, she was suddenly faced with a driver cutting through her lane to make an illegal turn. Rhea told us that driver had just gone through a stoplight where they could have turned left and reached their destination faster. This submitter was running late on his way to class when another driver pulled out in front of him from a side street. Our submitter slammed on the brakes and swerved while honking, managing to avoid hitting the car in the left lane as well. He said his dual-lens dashcam system only cost him $20 and it's still working fine 3 years later. This submitter was driving along when the driver of a Nissan Versa crossed into his lane, clipping his Honda Fit. The Nissan driver then took off, making this a hit and run. Our submitter followed them for a while before backing off, then contacted the police and gave them his dashcam footage. The police located the offending driver, cited them for the collision, and gave our submitter their insurance information. He sent along a shout out for his son Spencer, a big fan of all the Wham Bam channels. D-Nice, was driving home from work when she watched a wheel come off the trailer in front of her on the interstate. D-Nice was able to brake in time to avoid getting hit by the wayward wheel while the driver pulled over. She sent along a shout out for her daughter Courtney, who loves watching our videos. Darren was nearly hit by a wrong-way driver in San Jose. Darren told us the wrong-way driver was fleeing from the police and going the wrong way allowed him to get away. This submitter was headed home from work when another driver pulled out in front of him. Our submitter didn't realize he wasn't staying in the turn lane until it was too late for him to avoid a collision. The other driver accused our submitter of changing lanes and causing the collision. But the dashcam footage helped the insurance companies determine that the other driver was 100% responsible. Remember, just because someone has time to stop for you doesn't mean they have to. Always yield to the traffic already on the road. Sam was driving to New Hampshire when he realized the truck he'd been following for a few miles wasn't a tanker, but the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Sam said he's sure there's a nice wholesome joke to be made about not getting distracted by large wieners while driving, but we're not sure what it is. Oh well, we've seen some complaints in the comments recently about the abrupt endings of our videos.